Have you ever pondered over the root causes of the long-standing Israel-Palestine conflict? In the quest for understanding, we find ourselves delving into the annals of history, back to the late 19th and early 20th century, a time when the world was a very different place, and the seeds of what we now know as the Israel-Palestine conflict were just beginning to sprout. This was a period marked by the rise of powerful national movements that would go on to shape the course of history. Among them were Zionism, the Jewish national movement seeking a homeland, and Arab nationalism, advocating for the sovereignty and unity of Arab peoples. These movements, born out of a desire for self-determination, would go on to intersect in a land both held dear, sparking a conflict that continues to this day. As we dig deeper, we find that the seeds of this conflict were sown much earlier than we might think. The establishment of the State of Israel in 1948 marked a significant turning point. This momentous event led to the 1948 Arab-Israeli War, a tumultuous period that saw the region engulfed in chaos and violence. A series of armistice agreements were subsequently signed in 1949, but these did little to quell the rising tensions and territorial disputes between the two sides. Fast forward to 1967, and we find ourselves in the midst of the Six-Day War. This short, yet intensely fierce conflict exacerbated the territorial disputes, with Israel seizing control of the Gaza Strip, the West Bank, East Jerusalem, the Sinai Peninsula, and the Golan Heights. These territorial gains would go on to become major points of contention in the years that followed. The aftermath of the Six-Day War set the stage for a new phase of the conflict, a phase that would be marked by even greater tension, violence, and a seemingly insurmountable divide between Israel and Palestine. The late 20th century witnessed an escalation in violence and political tension. Indeed, this period was marked by some of the most significant events in the Israel-Palestine conflict. The First Intifada, which began in the late 1980s, was a widespread uprising against Israeli occupation. It was characterized by large-scale protests, civil disobedience, and, unfortunately, significant violence. This uprising was largely driven by a sense of frustration and despair among Palestinians living under occupation. The images of stone-throwing youths confronting armed soldiers became symbolic of this struggle. In the midst of this turmoil, there was a glimmer of hope. The Oslo Accords, signed in the early 90s, marked a significant step towards peace. For the first time, Palestinians were officially recognized as a national group with legitimate political rights. These accords established the Palestinian Authority and laid the groundwork for further negotiations. However, the peace process was fraught with difficulties. The Second Intifada erupted in the early 2000s, following the failure of the Camp David summit. This period saw an increase in suicide bombings and violent retaliations, resulting in a tragic loss of life on both sides. The Camp David summit, meant to be the crowning jewel of the peace process, ended in disappointment. The summit was an attempt to resolve the final status issues that had been left out of the Oslo Accords, including the status of Jerusalem, borders, and refugees. However, the talks broke down without reaching an agreement, leading many to lose faith in the possibility of a peaceful resolution. These major events of the late 20th century had profound impacts on the lives of ordinary Palestinians and Israelis. They shaped perceptions, hardened attitudes, and left deep scars that have yet to heal. The tumultuous events of the late 20th century have left a lasting imprint on the Israel-Palestine conflict. The echoes of these events can still be heard today, reverberating through the ongoing struggle for peace and justice in this troubled region. Fast forward to the present day, the Israel-Palestine conflict remains unresolved. The tension is palpable, the issues multifaceted. The status of Jerusalem continues to be a contentious entity, with both sides claiming the city as their capital. The right of return for Palestinian refugees is another major stumbling block, as millions of displaced individuals yearn for their homeland. Then there are the Israeli settlements, a thorny issue that has only grown more complex over time. These settlements, considered by many as illegal under international law, have become a symbol of the enduring conflict and the unending cycle of violence. This conflict has etched deep scars, physically and emotionally, on the lives of millions. Its echoes reverberate through time, reminding us of the complexity of human relations and the dire consequences of unresolved disputes. To delve deeper into such global issues, Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video. Every click counts in spreading awareness and fostering understanding.